Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of D Industry. In this episode, we have a very special guest with us. Joining with us is Vijay Karthik. Hi Vijay, welcome to D Industry.
Hi, Paige. Thank you for having me on this episode. Yeah,
Thank you so much. So, if you could give a brief about yourself to our viewers out there.
sure. So I'm Vijay. I'm currently working as a design lead at Salesforce. I've been a UX designer for about 14 years now. So yeah, that's pretty much all about me. We'll know more as we, talk. So,
That's wonderful, Vijay. So, if you could walk us through your journey into design, how did you start? And what are your tips to the beginners who are trying to start into the field right now?
wow, very interesting question. So how did I start? It goes back a long time ago, right? So even before getting into UX, I was in like you could call the early days of design was all print. In fact, even education was like, hey, let's design for newspapers. So that's what I learned, in terms of purely learning design. So my early years were with like designing for print, and yeah, that I enjoyed doing that. Like whereas most students in the like my class, everyone, all my friends were not so into design, but that's something that I enjoyed doing, and then it stuck with me, and then yeah, it became such that we witnessed the change or the shift from you know print or like analog design to everything moving to web and digital. And when that happened, I was in my early years, it was actually like I was freelancing and like doing a lot of other stuff while I was figuring out like what I wanted to do. And I saw that more and more people wanted to build websites. It was like friends at NAFT wanting to build e-commerce for their own label and things like that. So I was like, oh, this is definitely taking over everything. And yeah, since I saw the change, I wanted to be part of that. And I was lucky that I got to work with a very young studio. Um, it was a very small studio in Hyderabad, and it was started by like a wife and husband. And they took me in as one of their early designers, and I pretty much learned everything on the job there. So that was me saying that, okay, I want to do more in this space of like digital product design and web. And while I was there, Apple launched their iPhone. That became like we were all designing for mobile. And yeah, that that I think was the early days for me. And I, looking back at it, like what's the learning? I would just say if you have something that you're passionate about and you're learning design that way, it it helps to at least start working as an early designer somewhere, anywhere. Like you can learn that way, or go get yourself a design degree, like go to a college and learn design properly. So, yeah, either ways. So I think it's really about learning, and when you're like new to the space, the best way is that learn by doing and learn from others who are actually doing it. So yeah, so that all the way back to like 2009, 10. So yeah, that's pretty much when I started. Yeah, so with that, like as I started working with the studio, right, like we were doing early days of like iOS and Android apps and all of that. So it was great to learn that, but at the same time, the question was like, how are these products being built? Who's actually buying these apps? Who are the users? How is a business building these apps? So there's a lot more to learn. It's just not designing the screen or the UI or the interaction. It's like what's actually happening with what you're building and designing. So again, I had the great opportunity to learn in that same studio that we got acquired twice in the 6 years that I was there. We built a lot of products for like young entrepreneurs and like startups that were trying to build a product. And being in that stage, being part of a team that's trying to build something as a designer, you learn a lot more. And I think that opened up a much broader understanding of design, like not just UI, not just UX. It's not about even like just doing some research, talking to a bunch of people and saying, hey, this is what I observed, but what do you do with those insights, right? Like, how do you turn that into something that can probably help someone who's paying you the money to build the app to actually go and like capture the market or get the interest of users? So there's this entire life cycle of a digital product. So you start by not just designing the screens, but actually shipping it, witnessing how it goes live in an app store, then seeing like how people react to it. So there's a lot more that happens. And I was fortunate to like be there when all of this was new, and we had a lot to learn from that. And I like post that experience, I wanted to work on a product which was more like complex, and maybe even like go work for a startup. So I kept moving companies after that. I mean, getting to learn enterprise design, and I've been in that space for almost 8 years now, like a little more than that. So enterprise SaaS products. So that's been pretty much everything I have been doing for a good 8 plus years now. So yeah, and that again is a new learning. Like the learning doesn't stop, but you're learning about how systems are designed, not just products. How things are sustained as a business, or like if you look at some of the biggest players in the SaaS industry, like 30 years plus, like how do you build a product that long, and how do you keep evolving as things change in that space? So yeah, a lot of uh, that. And for anyone getting into design now, it might feel like listening to all this, oh, it's too like complex, or like it seems like a lot, but you will eventually become a better designer. You will eventually become an expert. You will learn a lot. It's just that expose yourself to all opportunities. Like uh, start with maybe a consumer app, work in services, work in a product, maybe go do something B2C, B2B, explore. So learn by doing and building. And the best way is to just work and learn, or build your own thing. So,
Thank you so much, Vijay, for sharing such inspirational journey with us. So let's talk about, if you have to share five major lessons throughout these 14 years of journey to a young designer, what would it be?
I think five things. I would start with craft. Um, Being someone who studied arts, maybe that's why, but not really. Like, even when you think of anything as a product that you remember, like your experience is always about the aesthetics first and foremost. So I also come across a lot of portfolios which are like, they've done so much work, but I wish they paid more attention to the finer details. So that's also a good space to start learning design, because it's really the aspects that you can quickly learn, and then you can slowly develop a taste. So I think it's about having a good craft and having a good taste. So that's really like step one, I would say, or like the most important thing that one can learn. And it can be applied to anything. I mean, look around you. You're working with a lot of great designers at a great company, and I'm sure they come from diverse spaces. But what's common across all of us is like that understanding of like, what is it that is great design or good design, and that comes from honing your craft. So I think that's the first one. And second, I would say is having a mindset of constantly learning and unlearning. What I mean by that is, especially after like sort of working in this space for more than like 12, 13, 14 years now. So this is a space that is constantly affected by technology. I mean, today we don't even talk about anything that is designed that is not tied to technology. Whether it's like you're designing even something physical like furniture, there's a lot happening in like how it is manufactured that that affects your design process, or like what you can even do. So I think constantly learning about all the different things that affect design. It's culture, it's technology, how people's like behavior and like cognition is evolving. So we need to constantly learn about all these diverse things. And what I meant by unlearning is again, as a young designer, you might have started working at some place, or maybe you came from a school which taught you in a certain way all these ideologies that you absorb. It's it's always a good thing to like start evaluating and like learn new things, unlearn things that are like going out of trend or like going are being disproved. And that's the great thing about anything that is scientific. So having that mindset to be open to new ideas, learning new things, and also like letting go of things that are not working. So yeah, I think that's the second thing I would say. uh, Five, right? Yeah. The third, I would say, really, design is a community. You learn not just by the work you're doing, but also from others. And the web has opened it up, right? Like inspiration is everywhere. You're looking at the great work that is being done by people all around the world. But at the same time, it has disconnected us from really the true sense of community. So I would encourage everyone to connect. Um, we connected through common friends. So again, ADP List is one platform. There are many others, and local communities. So connect with people. That's the third thing that I would emphasize on other designers, even beyond just like today the best paying jobs are in tech, so everyone is a designer in tech. But try to connect with people in other spaces that are also designers. Like maybe they're designing physical products or fashion, or like maybe someone is still designing books. We never know. Books are still being published. There are people who are still reading newspapers. So what's happening there? Also connect with like your tangential fields, people working in arts, in those spaces as well. And yeah, I think that's the third thing, like connecting with people. Fourth one, I would say, is more about doing something. Like what I mean by that is like you build something. When I started, design was really about like, okay, I know how to design in Photoshop, or like I know how to design something in Fireworks, and that's it. But the more I spend time designing something, it's like you can be a creator as well, not just a designer. So uh, it's actually far more powerful to build something and then learn from it. So I would encourage everyone to like try and do something. So with your understanding, with your skill set of design, push it a little further. Like, can you take that thing that you have on your screen in Figma and put it in like a web app or a website or an app, or like figure out like there's so many low code apps, or connect with people, maybe developers, and try building something. Or if that's not your thing, uh, go build a community, go build a podcast, go build like even a curated space where others can learn from you, or like from things that you're observing. So do something, put it out there. So it becomes your voice, and also it becomes your way of learning and like experiencing more broadly what it takes to be uh, like that creator and not just a designer. So that really would be the fourth thing. Uh, yeah, I'm really struggling with the fifth one, but I think over all these, like when I look back, I would say, why are you doing what you're doing? That becomes like your other thing that you should pay attention to. Like, hey, did I just join a design college because it was cooler than like just going to a engineering college? Like everyone is an engineer. I don't want that. Maybe let me go do something different. Is that why I ended up where I am? Or like what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And it's it's a more I wouldn't say a spiritual question or like nothing like that, but it's just being conscious of like what we are doing. That will probably open up more ideas on like where do you want to go next. So you have acquired all these things, like you've become better at your craft, you've connected with people, you're learning a lot, and you have all these great ideas. You have now even tried building something on your own. those are really like the big steps, and you've taken all of them. Now, like, what do you do next? So that's something you keep asking yourself. But I think, again, this could be an opportunity to find mentors or look for people who have already done things that you're aspiring to do. But I think that's the fifth and sort of like the like one of the most important things is to constantly explore yourself, like what you're doing, how you're feeling about it, and where you're headed and where you want to head. So that would be the last or the fifth thing. Yeah.
Those were some really awesome fives that you have shared. Thank you, Vijay. So now let's talk about your transition from being an IC to lead. How did it happen, and what were the major lessons you learned out of this transition?
Okay, great question. Again, so lead is really just a designation, I would say. So again, each company that you work for, it might have like different titles, and they're not even consistent across even within the IT industry, and even within similar companies, they're very different. So I think getting deeper to the question you're asking is probably around like when I look back, even in my early days when I was like working in a very small company, the opportunities were different. Like we were building a studio, we're setting up a space, we're trying to bring people. And those are the things that you do in maybe in a larger company, you would have a title called like, okay, you're like a director or like you're setting up a team. So maybe you're like a manager or whatever. So that titles don't really, you know, give much away of like what you're actually doing. Having said that, in terms of transition, I think most of us start by being ICs, we're building designs. And then slowly we start becoming like we become experts in a space or we better understand the domain that we are working in. And we start growing either as an IC, you become a lead or like you lead a product area or like a space or you better think of someone who's working in fintech for a while and they have really good domain knowledge. Maybe they can lead similar products elsewhere or even tangential sort of like products. And then there's this other aspect which is like someone is growing as a people lead where they're trying to grow their company or their team. They're able to bring better talent. They're really good at attracting some great designers to the team. So that's the other thing. So for me, I have had opportunities for both. I've worked in spaces where we had to find and bring talent and mentor the other designers on the team, look after their career and things like that. But I've had more joy in actually building products, which is why I have largely stayed as an IC, if you would say that, as an individual contributor. But how you contribute changes. Imagine early years of experience, right? I was really just working on project, but as I spent more years doing that, and then I started working on uh, like more complex products, and I became an expert in that area. What the nature of my work changed. It's like defining what would we do with this to gain like more market share or like grow this product, or what else can we do, which is maybe uh, working more closely with product and defining where we want to go. So that way, the things that you do change. And today, the role I have, or the most recent one that I had, where the designation is lead, you're defining how your product grows, and you're working very closely with your product team, with your researchers, and that's really the difference. Yeah, I don't know if that completely answers your question, but yeah,
Yeah, it does. It does. So, before we conclude, wanted to understand
yeah.
your perspective on how is AI gonna shape the future of design, and what should the young designers should learn about AI tools in implementing them in the design process.
Oh, great question. It seems to be like, a couple of years back when we first started seeing how the new or the emerging sort of like AI, what we call as large language models. So when we saw how it can do this generation of things, just not content, like just not text, but images. And the way it is able to understand what you're asking for, that almost gives you the impression that it has its own cognition, right? Like, but it truly doesn't. But still, it is able to achieve so much. So I think it's still an evolving space. I would encourage everyone to look at it the same way that we would look at a very interesting tool. It's a tool, but it's at the same time a technology. So I would encourage. I'm doing that. I'm learning to find ways in using it in your everyday work, and also in learning how it actually works. I'm actually fortunate that I'm working in a space which is using a lot of the tech. So I have that other sort of like incentive to learn more about it. But even if someone isn't, it's, I think, something important to learn how it works and then learn how you can actually use it, both of them. And there are great many tools, right? We don't have to list things, but if someone is a researcher, they can look at how they can use even Zoom, for example. Like, we are on this call now, it's being recorded, its transcript is available. You can do a lot with that if you are interviewing your users. And there are dedicated tools that have come up from that same idea. There's something called Tailwind, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, there are many interviewing tools. Even usertesting.com does that, where researchers can use it. Like, you can record your user interviews. You have done 20 user interviews. You can quickly get a summary of each one of them. You can ask questions on what your users were saying about something. It can even generate insights for you out of your user interviews. So that's one. As a designer, I think we are seeing what Figma is enabling for us with its latest update. They've paused rolling it out for more people, but you can also see a lot of similar things coming up in the space. So there's opportunity there to, like, maybe iterate more fast. Like, you can do quick iterations of your design, or even ask for that random first idea to be from the tool and not from you. Uh, but yeah, I think it's still emerging space. We'll see how it pans out. But for designers, I mean, just go play with it, like any other tool. I mean, we transition from technologies, and we have done that. So this is another big shift that is happening. So stay on top of it by learning and, like, playing in your everyday work. Maybe there's a little, but at least play with it. Try building something with it. Yeah.
That's really wonderful, Vijay. So before we conclude, wanted to know
Yeah.
if you could share some resources, design resources that you follow, and we'll list them also down onto the description as well,
Oh,
so
okay.
that people could use and learn from them.
Yeah, I mean, I've moved on from, like, a lot of the tool exploration that I used to earlier, but I still read blogs, like the OG blogs, like the old ones. I still read what 37 Signals is publishing on their blog. I go read about that. Uh, there's people I've met through my work. I follow their blog. So uh, one of the people I met at Google, they left a deep impression, is Madeline, and I read his blog. I can share these links if you want. After this call, we can list it. So I really now look for, like, long form, like articles, or like what things people are saying. I don't spend much time on, like, LinkedIn or on other like quick formats. But I think there's a lot to learn even from there. Like, at least you discover something new. So for inspiration, it's still Behance. That's one platform I love. I keep going back just to look at what's everyone doing. To stay on top of, like, what's happening in tech, I follow, like, Verge. I've, like, stopped reading a lot of other websites, but that's one thing that I still follow and, like, just catch up. I listen to podcasts. I also watch some of them. Like, MKBHD does his Waveform, so I watch that every time they have a new episode. I keep coming across your podcast as well. There's so many other young designers that are putting out content on YouTube. So yeah, weekends sometimes go on YouTube. So I let the algorithm also tell me what to consume. But I think everyone should explore on their own, like what are the things that are happening out there, who are the people that I want to follow, consistently look for good quality content. So for me, it has been like a couple of people that I've been following for a long time. So I still read what they're sharing. I also try to read books. Now it's much less, but I think for me, the other thing is to just create. Like every time, even on Sundays, if I have some time, I try to replicate something that I've seen that was cool. Uh, in terms of the craft, you can keep learning, right? Like on Figma, just try to, like, if you came across something that was like super cool in like animation, or like some skeuomorphic is coming back just as a style, uh, you can try creating that. So that's how I continue to like get inspiration and learn. So
Those were some wonderful recommendations. Thank you so much, Vijay, for being a wonderful guest and sharing all these wonderful insights with us. We are looking forward to
sure.
host you again in our upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Tej. Awesome.